Come on in, honey. The lantern's lit, the veil's a little thin, and the wind's been dying to carry a few secrets your way. Welcome to Raven's Ramblings, where the shadows walk beside us and the past never stays buried, and a good spell can speak louder than a sermon. I'm Raven Nightingale, part healer, part hellraiser, keeper of the old ways and ghost stories alike. So pull up a chair and listen close. You never know what might be whispering in the dark. Welcome back, everyone, to the next episode of Raven's Ramblings, Musings of a Southern Witch. I know, it sounds fancy. It's not, I promise. I'm Raven, and today I'm going to talk about something that some of us, I think, avoid. It's not because we're lazy or we're incapable, but because we're human. Today we're going to talk about comfort zones. Oh, yeah, dreaded comfort zones. We all have them. But more importantly, we're going to talk about what happens when we step outside of them. Yeah. Now, before I get started, let me just say this. Okay. I am recording this episode while actively living through this particular lesson. It is the inspiration for this particular episode. Okay. This is not one of those episodes where I have already mastered the thing and now I'm standing on a mountaintop handing out wisdom. Not that I fucking do that anyway. Okay. We all know that, right? We know I'm not just sitting out here throwing the wisdom out. But that's not what I'm doing. I am down here in the mud with everyone struggling trying to get my shit together. Yeah. Because lately, because I'm insane, I have been doing things that make me uncomfortable. Yeah, I am going back to college again. I know. I went the first time at 37. Now I'm not 37 anymore. And I'm going to go back. Sure, why not? I've been going to the gym. I've been making more videos and I am growing in this podcast and I am dealing with some personal things that honestly would be easier to just ignore. And every single one of those things comes with that little voice inside me that says, "Are you sure you want to do this? You could just stay home. You could do this later, or you could just not do it at all." And honestly, that voice is very convincing and has convinced me on numerous occasions for a very long time. So we're going to talk about that. Okay. I think comfort zones get a little bit of a bad reputation because people act like comfort zones are this terrible thing. Like if you're comfortable, then you're failing. And I really don't think that's true. Uh, Comfort zones exist for a reason. They are very protective, they are very familiar, they feel very safe. And after a hard season in your life, sometimes that's what we need. We need that little safe bubble for a little bit. We need rest or we need some kind of stability. Sometimes we need to sit on the couch wrapped up in a blanket with a cup of coffee and absolutely no intention of transforming into a butterfly and doing shit. And that's okay. It really is. I promise. Everybody needs those moments. Now, the problem isn't having the comfort zone. The problem is building a house there and never leaving the comfort zone. Yeah. Because eventually, what is protecting us starts to limit us. And I think a lot of us don't really realize when that shift happens. At first, we're healing from something, but then it turns into hiding, or we're recovering, and then it turns into avoiding. Or maybe we're resting, and then we're stuck. You know what I mean? Can you see the difference in those things? Because they are very different, okay? They can look very similar from the outside. They really can, but they are very, very different. Now, one thing I have noticed over the years is that a lot of witches, especially newer witches, wait for permission. Okay. And I am guilty of this back when I first started, 100%. I don't do it as much anymore because I have I just don't give a shit attitude. But we, as witches, a lot of times wait and try to wait until we know enough, or we wait until we're confident enough, or we wait until we have enough books or crystals or experience or enough certainty, right? We tell ourselves that we will start this particular thing when we're ready. But what if, now hear me out on this, what if being legitimately ready is not real? You know what I mean? It's like someone saying, well, we're going to wait and have children when we're ready for it. Is anyone ever truly ready for that? I mean, really, because you really do not know until you bring that child into the world, right? You really don't know. So, what if the construct of being ready isn't real? What if being ready is just a story we tell ourselves to avoid being uncomfortable? Oh, yeah. Yeah. Write that one down. That's a deep one. Because when I look back at some of the biggest moments of my life, and there've been a few, I was not ready for them. I wasn't ready to become a nurse. I wasn't ready to start a podcast. I wasn't ready to put my voice out there for strangers to hear and critique. Yeah. I wasn't ready to go back to school at almost 50. But I've done those things and I am doing those things anyway, in spite of not being ready. You see where I'm at with that? Because that is where the true magic of those kinds of things happens. It's not because I feel confident, but I'm moving forward despite the lack of confidence, right? I know. Had a whole epiphany about all this shit. But and I think that's something we don't talk about enough. Most people think that courage comes first and then the action happens. Me personally, it's usually the opposite. I take that action, I get you know what? Fuck it, let's do it. That's not courage. That's just sometimes blatant stupidity. Yeah. But then after I do the thing, then the courage catches up later. Once you've done the scary thing and you survive, your brain starts to slowly believe that maybe you can do the hard things. It's like your confidence is always running just a couple minutes behind what you're doing. You know what I mean? Does that make sense? It makes sense in my head. I hope that it is making sense to all of y'all. So when you look at things like mythology and folklore and even just spiritual traditions from around the world, transformation almost always starts with some type of uncertainty. You know, Nobody gets a magical invitation that says, "Congratulations, you are now fully prepared for your next chapter in your spiritual journey." That's not a thing. This is not Harry Potter. You know what I mean? Instead, there's usually a crossroads or a doorway or a forest or some type of journey or even those quintessential leaps of faith. Yeah. Something unknown, you know? Think about this is why the Fool card is one of my favorite cards because think about the Fool card in tarot. Okay. The fool is not standing there with a 5-year plan. The fool is not carrying a spreadsheet. The fool is stepping into the unknown. And that is why the fool is so powerful. Not because they're fearless. No, no, not because they're fearless, but because they are willing. And that is an important distinction, I think. You don't have to be fearless in everything. You just have to be willing. And maybe that's where some of us get stuck because we're kind of taught to wait until the fear disappears. But honestly, fear is not a stop sign. It's not. Sometimes fear is just proof that we are approaching. What am I doing in my life? Sometimes uh, fear is the proof that we are approaching something important. Now, and I don't mean like genuine danger. I'm not. I'm not talking about ignoring red flags. No, not that kind of stuff. I'm talking about those moments where your soul knows that there is growth ahead, and your nervous system kind of starts filing complaints with your brain. You know those moments, right? Like you've got a new job application just sitting there and you haven't submitted it yet because you're just kind of leery about it, or a class you haven't signed up because oh my god, chemistry sounds terrible and hard, you know, or a conversation that you've been avoiding because you don't think you're mentally ready for it, or even a project that you're putting off, or maybe it's this dream that you have been quietly carrying around for years. The one that just keeps showing up every time life gets kind of quiet and you go, I wonder. Yeah. Well, here is something that I've learned. Growth rarely arrives looking comfortable. In fact, if something feels completely familiar, then there's a good chance you're just repeating an old pattern, right? Growth usually is going to feel a little bit awkward or messy or clumsy even, or a little bit uncertain. Like getting a brand new pair of shoes that you haven't broke in yet. Like you think you're going to really like them, but you really just don't know yet. All right? And that's why I I like what I call the tiny courage theory. Yeah, I made that up. Don't judge me. You know, the tiny courage theory says you don't have to change your entire life overnight. You don't. For shit's sake, try not to, because that's a lot. You do not have to leap across a canyon. You just need that one small, brave step. That's it. Just one. Just one step. Maybe it's going to the gym for 20 minutes. Or hell, maybe it's just walking in the door. That's a big step. Yeah. Maybe it's posting a how to video. Maybe it's signing up for that class. Maybe it's going to an event. Maybe it's introducing yourself to someone new. Those tiny little acts of what I like to call also fuck it moments. Fuck it, let's see what happens. Those little acts of courage add up. They stack up, they compound. And by doing that, eventually you wake up one day standing somewhere you never thought you would reach. Not because you made this giant leap in the very beginning, but because you made 100 tiny ones. And I think witches, yeah, I'm bringing it back around to our witchcraft. I know. Y'all were wondering how I was going to tie this shit in, right? Here we go. Because witchcraft itself, all right, is built on small actions: lighting a candle, pulling a card, saying a prayer or an incantation, setting an intention, leaving an offering at a tree. That was my favorite. Planting a seed. All of those things are small actions repeated consistently, creating change over time. And honestly, the mundane life works the same way, really. Just small steps to lead up to those bigger things. Yeah. Now, here's a part that this one might sting just a little bit. All right. And this is going to go across the masses. A lot of us ask the universe for change, but then we resist the process that creates that change. We ask for confidence, but then we avoid the situations that would help build the confidence. We ask for healing and then avoid the work that the healing requires. We ask for abundance and then avoid opportunities because they make us nervous. We ask for growth, then stay exactly where we are. It's almost like we're saying, universe, please, please change my life. But, it's always a but. Don't don't make me uncomfortable. And the universe is over there like, well, that's gonna make this shit a little bit difficult, you know? I know these things because I've done these things more times than I really care to count or think about or acknowledge. I've done those things. I have prayed for opportunities and then immediately started listing reasons that I can't take those opportunities. I have wanted change while secretly hoping nothing actually would change because I'm comfortable. Yeah. And I suspect I'm not alone in that because change sounds super fun and exciting until it shows up at your front door with a intro to chemistry book. Y'all can tell I'm looking forward to that, huh? Mm-hmm. And then suddenly you're peeking through the blinds and pretending that you're not home. You don't want to answer that front door. Mm-hmm. One of the questions that I have been asking myself lately is this: who might I become if I stopped waiting for permission? That is a very powerful question. So ask yourself that. Who might you become if you stopped waiting for permission? Not who you should become. No, no. Not who somebody else wants you to become. Who might you become? What if the version of yourself you're hoping to meet is waiting on the other side of a decision that you've been avoiding? What if the next chapter requires a little bit of discomfort? Or even what if your future self is cheering you on from just beyond that edge of what feels safe? And maybe this isn't about some huge life change. Maybe this is all about something smaller. Maybe you've been wanting to start a spiritual practice or start journaling or uh, creating art. Create the art. It doesn't have to be good. Create the art. Create the art. Please, please, no matter what it is, create the art. Maybe you've been wanting to wear the thing or say the thing or try the thing or learn the new thing. Maybe your comfort zone has gotten just a little too comfortable. Not because it's bad, but because you've outgrown it. All right. Think about that for just a second, though. Maybe, maybe the discomfort that you're feeling isn't failure, it's expansion. Think about it that way. Maybe you're not breaking down, you're breaking open because there's a difference there. And as witches, we do spend a lot of time talking about transformation. I mean, everything we do is transforming in some form. We're transforming, our altars. We're transforming energy around us. We celebrate cycles and seasons and death and rebirth and shedding of old skin. But when that transformation shows up in our own lives, whether it be in our spiritual lives or in our mundane lives, it can feel a lot less poetic. And sometimes transformation looks like anxiety or uncertainty, or sometimes it's looks like sitting in your car before work wondering if you're capable of the thing that you're trying to do. And yet the magic is still happening. Yeah, take the step. So if you're listening to this today and you're standing on the edge of something unfamiliar, I want you to know this. You do not have to have everything figured out. You don't, because none of us do. None of us have it all figured out. Yeah, we don't. You do not have to be fearless. You do not have to be certain. You do not need permission. You do not. You're a grown ass person. You do not need permission. You just need the willingness to take a small step and then to take another one and then another one. And eventually you're going to look back and realize that what once felt impossible became your normal, because comfort zones are wonderful places to rest, but they are not where the story happens. The story happens when we step beyond that. The story happens when we choose growth. The story happens when we say, I don't know exactly what's going to happen next, but I'm doing it anyway. And that, to me, is magic. So, thank you for spending a little bit of time with me today. I hope you enjoyed this episode. It wasn't super witchcraft heavy, but I felt like it was something that I needed to put out there. Take the step. I'd love for you to follow me, subscribe, like all the good things. Go check out the website, Facebook, TikTok, Instagram. Jesus fucking Christ, I've got all kinds of shit, don't I? Like and share. Leave me a review. Leave me a comment. I love reading comments. It just makes me so happy. Until next time, my dears, stay curious and stay wild. And of course, stay witchy. Bye.